All right, I'm gonna get into this segment because somebody in my chat asked. They said, "Papa, what do you think about Dave Chappelle getting canceled?" Blah 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 blah. Well, I have two videos here that I want to watch. It's more of the Young Turks and then the quartering. So we have like our progressive perspective and then our conservative perspective on it. And then, you know, I also watched it. Here's what I want to say, because I put a podcast clip up on my channel for like my other channel, my Mama and Papa Gut channel. I think I just fucked myself. What is happening?
Dave Chappelle just released a...
Shut up! I'm fucking myself over here.
Dave Chappelle just released...
Okay. I'm going to do a little editing. Anyway, here's the channel down here. We had a full podcast, and then I put a clip up on there, right here about Dave Chappelle. And it didn't get a whole lot of views, which is totally fine. But it got ratioed insanely. It's got like a 66% like ratio. And I was really curious because what I effectively said, one thing I did is I just missed a joke about like the Jew jokes that Dave made. People were having a meltdown. Like, God forbid I miss a joke, as if like people got really heated. But then also, my perspective was like, hey, Dave Chappelle reads as the kind of guy who, from what watching that, Dave Chappelle's the kind of guy that's a little confused about LGBTQ or trans issues. But he's trans affirming, and he talked about this really great story about his trans friend Daphne and about how she defended him because he does make a lot of LGBTQ jokes. That's realistic. He makes a ton of them. It's like 80% of his specials are about gay and trans people. And Daphne, this trans woman comedian, defended him and said, you know, there was this common theme of like punching down. That people were saying you can't punch down, Dave. She was like, telling Dave he can't punch down is ridiculous because you have to, in order to be punching down, you'd have to think less of people, and Dave doesn't think less of trans people. And I was like, it was a good story. And then the LGBTQ community online bullied her until she killed herself, and that's horrible. What I've noticed, though, is that the fans defending Dave are just as toxic. Like, honestly, it was insane. It was fine to disagree. Some people were just pointing out and saying, like, oh, you missed this show. Okay, fine. But the amount of toxicity was incredible. It was incredibly ignorant. It's shameful. You guys should be really ashamed of yourselves. The point I basically made is that Dave Chappelle's jokes centralize around trans issues. I don't think he's transphobic. I don't think he fully understands trans people, but he respects them. Hot take somehow. I don't know how that's a hot take. And I made a comment about how, like, yeah, his jokes are transphobic, though. Edgy jokes are inherently bigoted. If I make a joke about women being in the kitchen, that's a sexist joke. Doesn't make it a harmful joke. And in a comedy context, it doesn't make it unfunny. But, like, bigotry is a spectrum. Now, you might disagree and only think that the offensive bigotry is considered bigotry. I just disagree with you. Like I said, if I make a joke about women and how they are in the kitchen and they suck at driving or something, that's sexist, but I think that within context, it can be funny. That's my point about Dave. A lot of you guys lost your shit. And I'm going to be honest with you. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves if you watch this video and you went wild in the comments. It's like, it's shameful. Anyway, I wanted to go through this because there's a lot of conversation about it still. So I kind of wanted, I guess maybe part of me also just wanted to talk about it and vent a little bit about how toxic the comments were. And I'm genuinely happy that I lost subscribers over that video. And I'm okay with that because I think if you're the kind of person who has a meltdown over that topic, I think that you need to reconsider your priorities. Because it was kind of sad. It was just sad. You conducted yourself in a kind of a pathetic way. Anyway, let's watch this first one. This is from the Young Turks. I'm not a huge fan of the Young Turks, but let's see what they have to say.
A new Netflix special, another comedy special, another stand-up. Dave Chappelle's a funny guy, but he's been a little bit obsessive with the topics of the LGBTQ community and what he feels is unnatural and crazy and strange. Let's listen to what he had to say. And
I don't know if that's exactly true, but...
And they've canceled people that are more powerful than me. They canceled J.K. Rowling. My God, J.K. Rowling wrote all the Harry Potter books by herself. And they canceled her because she said in an interview, and this is not exactly what she said, but effectually, she said gender was a fact. And then the trans community got mad. They started calling her a TERF. I didn't even know what that was. But I know that trans people make up words to win arguments. TERF is an acronym. Stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. This is a real thing. Now, I shouldn't speak on this because I am not a woman, nor am I trans. But as we've established, I am a feminist. I'm Team TERF. I agree, man. Gender is a fact. You have to look at it from a woman's perspective. Gender is a fact. This is a fact. Every human being in this room, every human being on Earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on Earth. That is a fact.
So yeah, I know those clips were meant to be taken out of context, but like even within context, that's what I'm saying. Dave isn't fully trans affirming, right? He doesn't believe in the separation between gender and sex necessarily, but his take is to be respectful to people and call them women. He, outside of the jokes, he affirmed he used the correct gender pronouns for different people. I don't know why it's such a horrible thing that an older man that grew up in a different generation, that honestly, whether you want to hear this or not, grew up in a community that was probably rather homophobic, is respectful of trans people. He just doesn't get it. That's what it is. And I think that we have very heavy expectations for how people should perceive things. Progress, I think, is for people who don't like trans and gay people, which isn't Dave, to just shut the fuck up. And if you don't think trans women are valid or anything, don't express that constantly. I understand I'm on a platform, and so people in my comments will be like, well, I don't think that's fine. This is a comment. We're talking about the topic. When we're specifically talking about the topic, that's fine. But if you're in a real world situation where you're in public and you see a trans woman, just shut the fuck up. Right? Be respectful. Now, I saw somebody make this really ridiculous point, and they said respect is earned, not given. And I understand what you're saying. But also, what you're saying is really dumb and intentionally out of context. Okay, and I need you to explain to you why. When you're saying respect is earned, not given, effectively what we have to understand is there's still a bit of assumed respect for a person. When you see a person, you will generally give them basic levels of human respect. Right? When people say respect is earned, not given, you're talking about in a much more, much more personal manner, where you're friends with that person, or it's a guy that you're working with that you don't quite like a lot because he hasn't earned your respect. But if you're fundamentally just going to say that you shouldn't respect people until they earn it, then what's stopping me from just walking up to you and calling you a fucking idiot? Oh, well, you didn't earn my respect yet. It's a bad point. It's a talking point because you don't like trans people. And it's fine, but just say, hey, I'm transphobic. Like, it's totally fine. Just say those words. Like, I don't know why you're so ashamed of it. Why does it bother you to be called transphobic? I don't really get it. If you don't affirm trans people, right? You could just not talk to that person, I suppose, in a public setting. Or just ask them their name if you don't feel like properly gendering them, Anyway.
I'm having trouble quitting Dave Chappelle, although some have already. It's just, we're seeing a lot more and more of stand-up specials and comedians looking more like preachers and motivational speakers and political pundits than anything else.
I mean, that's true. There's a lot of political comedy out there. I think that comedy in general is just meshing with politics very much lately. It's actually is kind of annoying. It's just annoying in general, but it happens on both sides. Like, let's not pretend. I mean, we just saw fucking Stephen Colbert do some vaccine dancing that was preposterous.
Yes, politics and society and rules and all that stuff have always been a part of comedy. So I'm not saying that. It's just what seems to be more of like an anger and an attack is more of the energy we're getting lately. Now, I'm sure the rest of the special had plenty of funny jokes and plenty of things that had to do with...
Well, I don't think he was attacking trans people at all. He was just expressing his opinion. If you watched it. But the fact that you just said, I'm sure... This is a problem. He just said, I'm sure the rest of it was this, that, and the other thing, which suggests that you didn't even watch it. And I feel like if you're going to do a commentary on Dave Chappelle and his special and comedy, you should at the very least watch it. I don't think that that's asking too much. It seems weird for you guys to talk about a topic so it seems like you had like an intern watch it and then pick out the clips that would just like push your perspective forward.
Hearted topics, or even probably serious topics that he took a lighthearted approach to, which is what comedy's always been. But there's this weird grievance going on, and people feel this need to have to tell everyone how right they are and how wrong everyone else is around them. And that I'm just saying because I said so.
That wasn't the energy I got from Dave. He just had a particular take. It was not like, oh, you're wrong at all. This is just kind of a hit piece, it feels like, at this point.
You, why does anyone who's trans give what you said? I don't understand why then they would listen to you and you said, it's just what it is.
If they didn't care what he said, then they wouldn't be trying to cancel him. None of this makes sense.
And they go, oh, didn't think that till Dave Chappelle said so. Where's the authority come from in that? Now, if you want to argue a point and have a debate and talk all that, throw some facts behind it. Do something else that would be like, maybe I'm going to convince someone so that my point of view becomes the norm, becomes the thought process that everyone has, because man, people have gone off the rails, they're crazy. Let me give you some facts and figures and some reality based off of why this is the case. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, so I want to propose something radical.
I mean, that's just like a weird thing, because when we talk about trans people, it's a very interesting conversation, right? Because you can, from a factual perspective, support being trans-affirming or non-trans-affirming, right? So somebody who's not trans-affirming, like a Ben Shapiro, for instance, would go on about biology and how you can't separate biology from like your gender identity. And that is a factual foundation in a conversation. Somebody like me would say, like, listen, you know, obviously 7 billion people aren't all the same. There are different environmental and biological factors that would cause different things to happen in everybody's life. And so I could understand separating like sex and gender and making those two different things to affirm somebody. Because at the end of the day, if somebody has a particular issue, and I don't know if gender dysphoria is classified as a mental illness or a sexual condition or whatever anymore, but you have a particular mental issue. The goal is to make sure that that individual functions the best in society as possible. And so from a treatment method perspective, affirming their gender identity is what's going to help them. Now, I understand that there's more than just medical trans people, but I'm going to focus on that for right now, because I don't think that it's you know, people who just identify, that's fine. It's just like, I'm going to focus on this one for my point. And so when it comes to treating people, making people have more positive mental health outcomes, it makes sense to be affirming of their identity. And as a society, we don't lose anything, right? Every decision we make, you're leveraging what we gain versus what we lose. We gain a bunch of people being able to function happily and peacefully in society. What we lose, we slightly blur the lines between men and women, and I don't really care, because I don't care. I just don't care. It doesn't really bother me that we would slightly blur those lines. I mean, we live in a society that's supposed to be promoting equality of opportunity. So men, women, anybody should be able to have a chance at any job, but if they aren't good at the job, then there you go. So gender doesn't really matter when it comes to jobs. It just, performance matters. And we've been talking about that, and that's a pretty typical conservative talking point. So then why do we really care if we slightly blur the lines?
Here, that we could say that Dave Chappelle is totally wrong and ignorant on this, which he most certainly is, which I'll prove in a second. Okay. But we don't have to go to hating him
again. This is a social contract.
Forever. So we don't have to go to canceling him. We can say, hey, you know what, Dave, you're an idiot on that. And then maybe watch the special. And if it's not funny for the third time, I didn't think the last two were funny, then we go, okay, well, I'm not watching them, not because I have some sort of policy, but because the last two were kind of a bore. Why were they a bore? It's because of what Jared's talking about. Politics and social commentary is so deeply ingrained in comedy forever, and it should be. But you ain't George Carlin. Sorry. He was.
Who cares? Wait, what does that mean? You don't agree with Dave Chappelle, so you shouldn't talk about political issues? Don't you think it's a little shitty to tell somebody not to talk about politics just because you don't agree with them? Because that's effectively what you're telling people.
He's the best at it, and
gender matters when it comes to some jobs, such as fireman, military. No, it doesn't. I want to explain this to you why it doesn't matter. Like I said, performance matters. You give people a performance test, and if they pass the performance test, right, then you're qualified. I'm saying it doesn't really matter. I know that they have like different lower qualifications for women in those two fields. But what my point is it shouldn't matter. Your gender or your sex shouldn't matter when it comes to you working. Because what matters is how well you can perform a job. So those things don't matter. Biological predispositions can certainly help you. Being a man in some cases and a woman in some cases, biologically or gender-wise, can certainly matter, but it doesn't matter from an individual perspective, because you should never go, well, that's a woman, so I'm not going to allow them to try doing a particular thing, or that's a man, I'm not going to allow them to try to do a particular thing. You allow the person to do the particular thing, and if they can't hit the qualifications, then they aren't fit for the job. So like I said, gender and sex don't matter when it comes to jobs. What matters is, can they handle the performance test of the job?
And this isn't just about Dave Chappelle. They're almost like about half of them are obsessed with this now. And they forgot to be funny. So they'll come on, they'll be like, oh yeah, It's courageous to be anti-trans. Watch me do it.
Well, the special was kind of funny. Some of the jokes still didn't really hit for me, but some of them were pretty funny. And his take on Daphne was incredible. I hope they talk about it because that was a really good conversation. And if they don't talk about it, they're going to be. I mean, it's just going to be disingenuous bullshit.
I'm so courageous. I'm pushing your buttons. I'm pushing your buttons. Okay, trans people, you're not a fact. Oh yeah, yeah. Do I get
This is really cringy.
an award for courage? Do I get it? When do I get it? When do I get the Purple Heart? Right? No, you don't get it, Dave. By the way, where the was the joke? Okay.
What the fuck? What just happened? That was insane. I could see why he got ratioed harder than me. This was just dumb. Like that's not what happened. Dave wasn't like mocking trans people. He was making jokes and like, yeah, again, some of them were a bit transphobic, but you know, Hasan, come get your uncle. Yeah.
Hey, I didn't see a single joke in there, right? I watched the longer part and
You what?
hey, I didn't see a single joke in there, right? I watched the longer part.
He watched a longer part. That's interesting. I watched the whole special. So like I just like how long was the special? What's the longer part? I watched like 15 minutes of it. Let's see. Shut up. I'm just trying to see. I think it was like an hour and change, right? Yeah, it was like an hour. How long was the longer part? Where's the longer part that what'd you watch? Like the first 10 minutes of it? He didn't even talk about trans people in the first 10 minutes. This is stupid.
And I mean, like the Caitlyn Jenner thing was a quarter funny. And by the way, guys, I'm not against trans jokes.
Whoa, the Caitlyn Jenner thing was funny? How transphobic? It was kind of funny. He made this joke about how Caitlyn Jenner became a woman and then won Woman of the Year. And he made this joke that'd be like if Eminem became Black Person of the Year. He didn't say black person. He said the bad word I can't say. It was a funny joke, but I can't believe you'd think that joke was funny. That's rather transphobic of you because he literally called Caitlyn Jenner a man. I'm not saying it. Don't fucking know. What do you like? Then that would be transphobic because he didn't. And Dave Chappelle would misgender some people when it was funny for a joke, but he would mostly gender people correctly. So
I'm Muslim. I'm not against Muslim jokes. I tell you all the time. Like there was this a couple of years after.
Hey, you're not against Muslim jokes? I'm not gonna make a joke.
I went through a thing, comedy show. This guy's ripping Muslims, but in a hilarious way. You know, he didn't mean it. I know when people mean it, right? I know when people are just making jokes and they're.
Well, let me just tell you, Cenk, this video definitely bombed, okay?
Part of the family and they're friends and they're joking around. But Dave doesn't look like he's part of the family anymore, right? And I don't mean some sort of liberal family and, oh, now we're going to banish him. You will now go into the liberal.
Yeah, you do, because I remember Dave was doing a lot of like social activism over the summer and like talking about shit. I remember he did something with Jon Stewart, and I fucking love Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart's phenomenal. And now you kind of are like kicking him out of the family.
Woods, right? No, I mean part of the family, like, hey, we're all friends here, and we make jokes about each other, and that's okay. But no.
But I didn't like your jokes, so fuck you. Because and you want to know why? Because a very loud online LGBTQ perspective didn't like the jokes. But I feel like that's not representative of the majority of trans and gay people. I don't think most people really gave a fuck about Dave Chappelle's comedy. Like, I don't think most trans people let Dave Chappelle's comedy like destroy their life. I don't think they give a shit.
That stuff he said about it's a fact that there are genders. That's third grade Ben Shapiro stuff. Okay, that's embarrassing. Okay. So let me show you how simple it is to get rid of that stupid argument. He said, when you come out of we all come out of a woman. That's a fact. Genders are real. That's a fact. Okay, that's a fact. And then people then identify as the other gender. That's also a fact.
Well, it's like a social construct, and they can do that. Yeah, okay.
They're lying. They change their whole lives. They change sometimes their anatomy because they're what? It's not a fact. They're all lying. By the way, ironically, you know what that sounds like? It sounds like racists who said, "Oh no, black people aren't being abused by cops." All
right, shut up. What's very interesting is Dave made this fucking incredible point that I feel they're not going to talk about, and I need to continuously reinforce it. He did this whole anecdote about how Daphne, the trans woman who took her life because of trans online activists, like I suppose Cenk over here, Uyghur. She laughed at every one of Dave's jokes, even the touchier ones, and Dave was like acknowledging that he was making like transphobic jokes basically. And the only time that she got offended was when he jokingly said, Daphne, I don't get you. And she got very upset and said, you don't need to get me. You just need to understand I'm a person going through shit. And that was like the defining moment of the entire fucking thing. That was really signal to me, you don't have to agree. You don't have to understand trans people. You don't have to understand anybody. You should just understand that that people are people going through shit.
Black people are lying, right? All trans people are lying about what they feel inside and what they actually identify as. No, it's a fact that people were born one way. It's a fact that certain people feel a different way. It's a fact in how they've lived their lives. Just leaving it at fact A is so stupid. I mean, everybody's born with these, so I must be right. Okay, maybe that's funny, okay, but accidentally. So you don't have to.
I mean, that wasn't funny.
And by the way, I hate cancel culture when it makes no sense and you're canceling people for something they said when they were 17 years old or in 1937, although 37 would have been a bad year. But this isn't that. He just said it and he means it. And does it make a difference? Yes. A lot of people look up to Dave Chappelle and they can't do what I'm doing right here, which is like, hey, I like his old stuff. I like some of his new stuff, but that stuff is right there is ignorant. They think, oh, Chappelle said it must be true. Oh, he's the brave one. You're not brave.
I don't know if people are like, Chappelle said it, he's a doctor or a teacher, he must be true. I'm sure people agreed with him. I didn't listen to that and go, you know what, I hate trans people, you know what I mean? I feel like it doesn't have this profound impact you think it does. Because it's not a special for children, just so you know. This is something that you shouldn't watch unless you're a grown adult.
You're just stupid.
That's rude.
Yeah, I want to say first, I'm 3 for 3 times on the power panel. Not yet once have I accidentally tripped up and sworn. So a big you to Dave Chappelle for all of this nonsense. It's I love when comedians do that thing where they're like, people get canceled. I love when comedians do that thing where they're like, people get canceled. I really shouldn't say this. I'm filming my Netflix special, but here's some bigotry. Like it's to drive engagement. It's to create a controversy. You want to be canceled because that's going to drive views. Because canceling doesn't really work. It's not a real thing. Like if now that he's got all this controversy around him,
yeah, canceling works, but okay. It just Dave doesn't care because he's not a young person on Twitter and he doesn't want to get them. Like half of a cancellation, if not more, is your mental perspective on this.
His special's getting more views. I also want to say it's extremely sexist to reduce the value of women to their reproductive abilities. Lots of cis women cannot give birth. Are they less of a woman because they can't give birth, Dave Chappelle?
I don't think that's the point he was making at all. I think he actually mentioned that. I think he actually mentioned that there are some women who can't give birth. Okay.
And it is not a fact that every child comes out of a vagina.
Well, you're right. Some people have C-sections, but they all grow up in a uterus or a deuterus. If you're a trans man,
C-sections exist. Like, have you not heard of those? That's a thing. And
this is just such a dumb point. Like, is this? Did you know that cutting someone's stomach and uterus open and pulling them out instead of it passing through their vagina is a thing? It's like, yes. But the normal pathway would be the vagina, right? Like, I'm not agreeing, right? I'm not on Team Turf. I'm very affirming of trans people. I'm just saying that this logic is dog shit.
Also, the person who is pregnant and giving birth might not identify as a woman. They could,
yeah, deuterus, like I said.
Could identify as non-binary. They could identify as a man or whatever.
Or a booterus if they're non-binary. Neuterus? I don't know.
Whatever they want to be, because gender is, factually, a social construct.
Yeah, a lot of things are social constructs. Yeah.
It's not something you're not.
A thing be.
Gender is, factually, a social construct. It's not something you're not.
Did she just burp? What the fuck? Yeah, everything. A lot of things are social constructs. Like everything, attractiveness. Like a lot of things are social. The existence of a thing being a social construct does not mean that thing is complete. It doesn't mean that you're right. Right? Identifying that this is a social construct doesn't mean that you get to change the rules. It means that we get to have a conversation about it, and we're very new to this conversation. And that's why you should allow people to be what you would consider wrong, because then you can correct them and say, no, I disagree because of this point here. And then they might go, oh, But when you're like, hey, it's stupid, and then you just start burping in the mic, all of a sudden, now you're just lowbrow content like myself, you know, and you don't want to be lowbrow like me. Of course not.
And we know this because throughout history, there's been different conceptions of what gender is, and different cultures are different conceptions of what gender is.
Sure.
But yeah, ultimately, he called himself a feminist and then said some extraordinarily sexist bull.
Not most women actually would not really agree so much. So I just want you to know that I talk about this a lot. My partner is somebody who was very active in like the trans space and the feminist space and whatnot when she was younger, and she used to do counseling for older LGBT or rather LGB women, and a lot of older women, and this was very interesting. A lot of older feminists aren't a particular fan of trans people, especially women. And the reason is because, and this is whether you want to listen to this or not, like this is real. A lot of times, trans women will grow up as a male and they have their own struggles, of course, with their identity, but they don't understand traditional feminist issues. They just don't, they didn't grow up as a woman, right? And this is something I talk about Blair White. Where I talk about Blair White talks about being a woman as if being a woman comes with more privileges than being a man. Now there are privileges and disprivileges to everything, but I would say, and I would argue that most of your disprivileges as a woman start when you're younger, when you're getting steered away from more masculine leading jobs, or steered away from masculine type careers, told that you really can't do something, kind of relegated to the home of like the house person. You're not really encouraged as much to do like more masculine jobs, right? And so like, trans women couldn't understand that. Most trans women, I don't think that they should be able to transition before they're 18, but whether you believe that or not, older trans people didn't transition until they were far above 18. So that's why feminists struggle with trans people, because they don't understand their struggles. And neither of them understand each other's struggles fully, honestly, when it comes to like trans women versus cis women. And I just think you should understand what you're talking about when you talk about stuff. And I don't think that she knows anything. I don't know who this person is, but like it just seems like you don't because how are we going to tackle these issues unless we are honest about it? How can we tackle these? This is literally intersectionality. Trans women having an issue with being like a trans and a woman, and it conflict their transness conflicting with their femininity in a feminist space or something. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say. Like that's what this is about. It's about trans women who struggle in feminist spaces because they didn't grow up as women, a lot of them. And that's like, I know that's a lot to swallow, but that's a real thing. And if you don't understand that, I think that you need to educate yourself more on LGBTQ issues.
So, and also TERF is a real thing. J.K. Rowling is a TERF from the island of TERFs, where the TERFs congregate to do TERFism.
Yeah, I don't really know too much about J.K. Rowling because what I've seen, I haven't seen a lot because it doesn't seem like there's a lot, is like J.K. Rowling, she basically expressed what I said. She talked about something to the effect of trans women not really necessarily fully being able to identify as women in the capacity of the struggle. There's so much there, and it feels like everything's out of context. I haven't been able to find like a decent resource in the conversation about it because most people seem to virtue signal over this topic rather than have a real conversation about it.
That's the UK.
But The Young Turks is not a good show. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So look, again, all of this is so childish because like, oh, did you know God created us with different genitalia? I win. Well, we're animals. There are animals that switch their genders. This is like really.
Like what, slugs? What the fuck are you talking about? I'm so confused right now. Should we eat people? Like, what, if we're going to compare us to animals? What's happening?
Stupid right-wing stuff like, God did not create anybody gay. Yeah, he did. Why are they? Why do they?
Well, that's actually, see, this is like what's weird is that that's not even what religious people would say. Religious people would say like, God created you with a struggle of being having gay thoughts, and you have to work through them. Now, I disagree with that. That's insane. But that's what you would usually say as a religious person. Like,
again, they're not lying. There are guys who are into other guys, and they can prove it. So, and they exist in nature.
Hot take.
Ta-da! Lots of them. And there are also gay penguins. I mean, we have to say the most obvious things in the world. There are other animals that switch genders. Why do they do that? Because it's part of nature. It happens naturally. To think that that humans are a special kind of animal that would not have any issues with like not having clear genders. And
well, I mean, like, I can understand why people would think humans are special animals, since we're the only ones that can fucking talk and think critically. So I can understand that fundamental idea. Obviously, gay people are fine. Like, you shouldn't not be gay. I disagree with religion in a lot of places. I disagree with the fundamentals of like, oh, you have stressors put onto you to test you to get to heaven. Because I think that if God, for instance, is allowing people to get violently raped, sorry for the intense language, as a test, then God's a fucking asshole, right? That's terrible.
As Ravana pointed out, it's a human construct anyway. So if you don't know what that means, so race is a human construct. So what does that mean? Are people like...
All social constructs are rooted in things, though. Like, that's just something that we understand. Just because race is a social construct, right? We identify different like groups differently depending on, like, right? So German people didn't used to be white. Now they are accepted as white. But you generally wouldn't support the idea, because if you think that race is a full social construct, then you would allow me to, I'm black right now. I could paint my face, I could literally paint my face black, identify as black, say whatever I'd want, and socially you'd have to totally affirm me. Obviously there are limits and rules, and we have to have logical conversations about this. Now, going into this, what you have to understand is that transracial is a real thing, but it's generally relegated to people who are adopted by families that are, I guess, different ethnicities. So if you had like a black family adopt a white kid, he's going to identify much heavier with being black because he was raised in a black household, right? You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, somebody's either black or they're white. Are they? Think about it. We just call them black and we call them white, but it's kind of random. Italians are kind of brown. Mexicans are kind of brown. Turks are kind of brown, kind of white. Italians are kind of white. You know why? Because the northern Italians are right next to Switzerland, so they seem whiter than the southern.
What the fuck are we talking about? Like, why don't you just talk about the issue, like the specific issue, and like stay on topic? So, like, you could have made this segment 3 minutes long. I'm assuming they wanted to fill out a 15-minute like ad time or something, or a time for it, because it's I don't get it. This is just dumb.
Southern Italians are next to Africa almost, and they seem more brown because they are, but they're all called white. Why? Because it's a thing that we constructed. They seem more brown, so they seem whiter than the Southern Italians are next to Africa almost. Constructed for us to categorize people in different ways to make our lives simpler, but it has a lot of downsides. And gender is also a human construct. You are male, you are female, right? And so what if you were like many other animals, you were born one way, but your mind thinks something else, right? I mean, come on, this is so obvious. And the part about all this that actually,
well, keep going. Like, what if I was born with pedophilic tendencies? Like, I just feel like if you're gonna introduce like such a wide concept like that, like, shouldn't you double down on it? You know, because that's what somebody would say. Like, what about pedophiles? They should be okay by your logic of social constructs, which obviously is stupid. But I just feel like he's starting a point and then just never finishes it, and it becomes a very brain dead conversation.
See, I'm most disappointed at is that I thought Chappelle was smart, and I hope he is in other ways, right? I mean, it doesn't get rid of all of his past work. I mean, you watch the Chappelle show from Comedy Central, that's still the best stuff on earth, right? And it doesn't, we're not gonna go retroactively cancel his earlier funniness, okay? At least I'm not, right? That stuff was funny, right? And that's when he was at his prime, and he was.
What a moderate take. His stuff used to be so funny, I believed in him, but now he's just a dumb idiot.
Okay.
He was part of the family, and he made fun of the different races and different things, and brought out truths with that humor. Now they're all stuck in a giant, ironically, genitalia measuring contest of who can be braver. Oh yeah, I'll piss other people off by being even dumber than you. And they all say it like, watch this, watch this. I'm not supposed to say this, but I'm so courageous. Okay, hatred towards other people, yes. No.
It's so weird. I don't know.
I'm physically cringing. You know, like that when your body feels tighter, like you just kind of like, you want to just kind of like rant. I'm physically cringing from what he's saying. Like, it's just so cringy.
There's a thing, by the way, the first thing I always wonder is, why do you care? It's kind of what I was pointing out at first. Why do you care? I have opinions about what people do with their lives and how they do it and what car they bought, because I'm a car person. But why do I care enough to then go on stage, or even say, I have a level of platform here, go on the show and be like, you know what? People who drive Priuses just need to stop it. That's what I feel, because I
mean, you can make a joke about it. There's jokes all over TikTok about driving Kia Souls. I drive a Kia Soul, and it's a great car, so go fuck yourself. So I don't find it funny, but it's still humor subjective. Also, what I find very interesting here, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe one of these people is trans, but I find it very interesting that Dave Chappelle has close trans friends, and he has a take on trans people, a very real human take, but there's no trans person here to even represent their own perspective. That's from what I'm seeing. What? That's what I'm seeing here. So, you know, it's a little telling when you have somebody who you want to like call a bigot or a transphobe that has friends that are trans, and then people who are saying that everything's transphobic don't really know trans people on a personal level. But doesn't that seem skewed? Doesn't that seem bizarre? I feel like that's weird.
I think Priuses are useless to a degree for what I like to do with cars. But if someone decides to do that with their life, why is that sticking in my chest? Like, I gotta say it. Why is that so important to you? Why is it so important to you what someone does with their life? And if you think they made a mistake and they chopped off some genitalia, you know,
He doesn't think any of that. He just said he doesn't really get it, but he's totally respectful. Like, I don't really understand.
oh my God, you're never getting that back again, bro. Why are you thinking about it? Why do you care what's between their legs? Why do you care who their partner is? Why do you care how they have a child? Why do you care how they cut their hair and what clothes they wear and what color it is and what shoes it is and what underwear they put on and what name they give themselves? Why does that matter to you? Do you go
It doesn't matter to Dave.
to bed and go, for the millions of people who are trans, probably, I can't give you the full number, so of the number of people that are trans, you go to bed every night and think about every one of them before you can go to sleep? How dare he? Oh, how dare she? Oh, how dare he? How dare she? What a miserable life. Why can't you just go about your life? It's so hard. It's so much harder to care about someone else's life when you've got yours to live. And you were doing pretty good, by the way, so why are we still thinking about other folks?
It's such a great point. And I'll add one.
I mean, I guess it would be a great point if that applied to Dave Chappelle, but it doesn't, which would be made clear if you watched his special.
Last thing to it. Why do you keep saying that you know what they think better than they do? What a weird claim.
Who said that?
Right?
What's happening? That's kind of what you're doing, no? Like, you don't have any trans representation on right now, my understanding. I mean, maybe that woman is trans. I don't know. Not to. I mean, I feel like I would have been able to tell. I don't want you to think that that's what transphobic. I don't really care if you do, to be honest with you. But isn't that what you're doing?
I like the Steelers. No, you don't. How do you know? But I do like the Steelers. No, you don't.
I don't know what you're saying.
What a bizarre thing, right? What an insane thing to say. I changed my life to structure it around the Steelers. No, you didn't. No, that's because I really like the Steelers. No, it's all a trick.
What is he saying? Steelers?
It's absurd. And there isn't something wrong with trans people. There's something wrong with people who are obsessed with denying their reality. And they should get counseling. That's all.
You really gonna make me watch this? Okay.
It's that time of the day. I'm doing it. I'm doing the damn thing. I've been holding off on it. I'm going to be covering the Dave Chappelle stand-up special, Closer. I watched it last night. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I even tweeted about it to start the...
Comedy policing is dumbest thing is on activism. But man, Dave Chappelle is just a boomer now. It's very sad to see. Okay, he's an older guy with older perspectives. Great.
discourse.
The comedian took center stage Thursday night at the Hollywood Bowl for a sold-out show, performing to a crowd that included Brad Pitt, Tiffany Haddish, Stevie Wonder, John Hamm, and more. While the comedian did not repeat any of the jokes in the special that have been loudly rejected, he did have a few things to say on cancel culture, saying, "If this is what being canceled is like, I love it." On the topic of gender, Chappelle said in the special, "Gender is a fact."
Every human being in this room, every human being on earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on earth. That is a fact.
He also sided with Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling by identifying as Team TERF, a term that means trans exclusionary radical feminist, an ideology that excludes trans women as women.
I'm Team TERF.
The National Black Justice Coalition called for the Closer to be pulled from the streamer, and GLAAD weighed in on Twitter. Dave Chappelle's brand has become synonymous with ridiculing trans people and other marginalized communities.
Here's the thing. Dave Chappelle's brand has always been ridiculing marginalized communities, oftentimes even including black people, as a matter of fact. Of course, there's a difference when a black person is making jokes about the collective experience of black people. Don't hear my word for it, a white guy. Dave Chappelle himself has literally admitted that. So much so that he turned around and fucking quit. He quit the Chappelle show because he saw someone laughing at him and not with him. That was a huge point. Having said that, however, was the Chappelle show not fucking awesome? No, it was. It was fucking incredible because there were some really good fucking bits in there as well. And that
Well, I wonder, why is it that like all the people who criticize Dave Chappelle, they jerk Dave Chappelle off in like the weirdest way? I noticed that. They're like, his stuff was so amazing. He was such an incredible, like his stuff was funny. Like I enjoyed it. I watched it, but I didn't like these guys act like they came all over themselves every joke. It's just weird.
That's the whole point of comedy. Some of that shit's going to be funny. Some of that's not going to be funny. And you never know how it's going to be received overall. I don't even fault people for you know, having fucking privileged blind spots and making silly jokes or making hurtful jokes every now and then. In order to make people laugh, you're going to fail a lot. And failure in that situation means that people are not going to find what you're saying funny, especially when you're trying to reach out to a broad audience while being clever, while making jokes. Some jokes punch up, some jokes punch down, but ultimately all jokes punch. Now, I am a huge fan of Dave Chappelle. Incredibly important person for me specifically. I love Dave Chappelle. I had the Chappelle show on UMD, okay, in fucking Turkey. And when you actually take a comedian's work and even write it on a different medium, you will never be able to translate the humor because the delivery is so unique to that person. If you cut a comedian's joke in half, you will never be able to show the full context of a joke. It's as simple as trying to retell a Dave Chappelle joke, or any other comedian for that matter. If you tried to retell a fucking joke from a comedian, you would never be able to fucking get that same energy. You would never be able to capture that same essence. But having said that, as someone who also believes that like fucking canceling comedians or comedy policing is not anything, like it's not activism, it's nothing. Okay, I don't believe that. I watched Dave Chappelle's last special, and I think the worst thing you can call Dave Chappelle is not a fucking transphobe, because he is transphobic for sure. But the worst thing you can call him is just a hack. And I'm sorry, but his last special was literally the divorced dad special. He was out there spouting the same exact bullshit that a fucking victim of divorce court brother would say as it pertains to fucking trans people. Like literally, it was just so bad. Like it's not that like, oh my God, I'm so triggered. Like I'm so triggered. I know like a lot of people will reflexively want to fucking defend Dave Chappelle, and I totally understand where you're coming from, especially if you grew up with his content and you fucking love him. But his jokes were such like old person jokes. It came from a place of not understanding and relying on the lowest hanging fruit you possibly can, which is to say, haha, trans people are fucking weird. It's crazy, right? Oh, that man, that's a woman with a penis. That's wild. That's some shit you hear from the fucking random guy who watches Fox News every night, dude. You're defending your people, so I get it. Yes, I myself, I'm a trans person, and that's why I'm defending other trans people. That's the only way that I can do that, right? Not everyone is a trans lover like you. Like, see, this is what I mean. That's the kind of guy who's gonna be like, yeah, he was fucking funny, dude. You're a fucking trans lover. Like, what does that mean? I'm a human lover, okay? Trans people are people, dude. And even Dave Chappelle gets that.
I mean, some of the jokes were funny, some of them weren't. I'm just a little... The criticism that his jokes are old because he's old, like, yes. That is it. And normally, this is what generally happens to people in general. Well, typically happens to people. I don't want to be redundant in my language. But as people get older, their views don't change too much, right? And so somebody that would be considered a more progressive-leaning person or more appropriate in some capacity becomes less appropriate and less progressive, right? Like, for instance, me, my beliefs, whatever. Like, I'm a UBI guy, blah, 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 blah. 20 years from now, that's going to be a more socially acceptable thing. I'm going to be considered a conservative. You know, like that's just what happens. So if your whole criticism is like, hey, he's making the same jokes, like similar jokes that he's always been, like, yes, his jokes are about his personal experiences with different like trans people and gay people. And there are a few other ones in there, like a solid amount of them were trans jokes. And it was like a little weird and it was transphobic. I've said that before, but it was in the joking context. I don't think it was harmful, but okay.
By the way, because I listened to the entirety of his stand-up special. Even Dave Chappelle, when he talks about his Daphne bit, which had a lot of fucking problems in and of itself, but even when he talks about that, that's kind of the heart of what he was saying, is that, like, I don't care what people are, I know everyone's going through their own thing, and I don't want to make it worse for others overall, and that's truly what I believe in. But
well, that's fair. At least he acknowledged that, unlike his fucking uncle.
The unfortunate reality there is, like, if you're fucking biting Steven Crowder, dude, as one of the greatest fucking comics of our generation, that's a failure, dude. I'm sorry. That's so bad. That's so sad. It was
who's doing that?
Like watching a fucking Steven Crowder bit, dude. It was like listening to your fucking drunk stepfather ramble on about these transgenders. Like he made like a they-them joke at some point. It was really not a joke. Those were literally just like mind-boggling to me. As someone who has a lot of fucking respect for Dave Chappelle, I love him. Like I was legitimately surprised that someone who's supposed to be such a fucking good.
I'm so confused. If this has been a consistent controversy with his trans jokes. Why now? Why have like go against it now? Just the times because he's getting canceled? Is it like easy jump? What is it?
Cultural critic, and that's what comedians are. The best ones are, at least the ones that have staying power. Just basically mocking trans people, ridiculing them. Some of the most marginalized people on the planet are trans. We know this already. Come on. But he was saying stuff like they are at the centers of power and they're punching down on me. Like he brought that up so many times. Like, you know, white people switched up. I used to be able to make fun of white people, but then white people switched up and they were like, you know, now I'm trans and white, so you can't make fun of me. Did you even watch it? I mean, his unironic last point on his stand-up special is, please stop punching down at my people. That was his last take to the LGBTQ community.
That's the... No. I think he missed the joke. So Dave Chappelle talked consistently about the punching up and punching down thing, and he didn't like the idea of like punching up or punching down. He wasn't punching down. He was just like making jokes. And the LGBTQ community would say, you're punching down, you're punching down, you're punching down. And then Dave Chappelle expressed a frustration with the fact that the LGBTQ movement was moving faster than the movement of, for black rights, which he's right. It was moving much faster. LGBTQ people have gotten rights faster. And at the end, he made a joking commentary and effectively saying, you've moved faster than us, so you're above us, so stop punching down at me. That was the joke. He didn't actually mean it. It was an ironic statement. Like, you missed the joke, quite literally. Like that. And that's okay, because I missed some jokes too. I missed the Jew ones went over my head. But yeah, you missed the joke, bud.
Actually, not what he said. No, dude. Black trans women specifically are at the intersections of marginalization to a degree that is the absolute worst of all society has to offer. There are a couple different types of audiences that will be receptive to this material, right? And it's not because I'm a fucking like, oh my god, I'm so sensitive.
Well, that brings up a new point. I mean, why are black trans women the most, what do you say, marginalized group? That's mostly because of like the regressive attitude towards trans and gay people in the black community. That's just truth. Unfortunate truth, but yeah. And you could say that Dave Chappelle to some extent parrots that, but I think that his message of respect before understanding was phenomenal. And I thought that that was a great point that he had made. I thought that was fantastic.
I'm so sensitive. I'm a sensitive guy. Like, no, I mean, I fucking listen to edgy comedy all the fucking time, okay? And the issue there is there are a couple different kinds of people that are going to be receptive to this and be like, no, it's great, and demonstrate blind loyalty. Dave Chappelle fans. A lot of Dave Chappelle fans are going to say, this is Dave Chappelle. This is what he does. He's edgy. Why are you fucking trying to police comedy or whatever? Then there are the worst kind of people, Republicans, who will defend it because they'll be like, well, cancel culture's coming after Dave Chappelle again. And, you know, people like Steven Crowder who basically see their own fucking source material on stage. It hurts. It really does. And obviously,
I just feel like trying to say that Dave Chappelle is Steven Crowder in this case is really just a lazy way of criticizing his content. Because Crowder is universally dog shit, right? And that's my perspective. He doesn't make I mean, he's just like shitty. And you might think that he hits jokes, and that's fine. I just don't like Crowder. I think that he's a racist piece of shit. I've never seen Crowder have a take of like, even though I don't agree with trans people, I still accept them as people, understand that they're people going through struggles, and that's why I properly gender people. Like, yeah, Chappelle did misgender people in the jokes that he made, but then he would correctly gender when he was being more serious, like with the Daphne stuff. I just feel like that's a lowbrow attempt. It's like memeing somebody. It's like, oh, they're just like Crowder, and like now you just have a win because Crowder's bad, at least in my opinion.
like, I'm not trans. I'm not like impacted by his transphobic rhetoric in any meaningful capacity. Obviously, I'm saying it in the most selfish way possible. Comedy is incredibly important, and I see a lot of these like Nanette style, you know, liberal comics who say that even people who have experienced marginalization should not make content out of that because you're making other people laugh at your fucking.
Thank you for the subs.
Biggest Seth just subscribed.
Thank you for the subs. Sorry, I usually pause it, so I got startled.
Sadness in your experiences, and I fucking despise that because life is fucking awful. Okay, it's dog shit for the most part. It's an endless sequence of disappointments, and then sometimes you come, other times you have a big shit, and that's really rewarding. Sometimes you eat really good food, and comedy's up there for me specifically. I think that comedy is incredibly important because it helps you sometimes make sense of the senseless. It helps you identify with different perspectives that you could not, that you hadn't previously considered, and it makes you happy. It makes you laugh. That's supremely important. So I get.
But so this is the problem that I have is that from a very, very, very left take, what Dave said was very transphobic. But from a normal person's take, I just don't like this because these are people like Hasan who don't like go outside and talk to people outside of their own sphere. Bro, I live in a very like mixed area. Well, I used to. I just moved to a whiter area, I guess. And normal people aren't super trans affirming. Nobody at my old job was really trans affirming. I wouldn't talk about it a lot, but when we did, it would be like, I don't get it. And I think one of the best things you can do is promote a good message to people about trans people that resonates with them. And when you're talking about people that might be more moderate to conservative leaning, respect is a really big thing. Like in my friend groups, respect is huge. It's more important than really anything else. And Dave's message of respect trans people, even if you don't get it, is a phenomenally important message that we need to hear. Just because we should be at the point where trans people or trans women are considered women and trans men are considered men, doesn't mean that practically we're going to get there tomorrow. Dave Chappelle expressing his lack of understanding of trans people, but saying, I respect them as people that are going through shit, is an incredibly powerful message. You can't skirt around that message because that's going to resonate with a lot of people that are, would you consider transphobic? They don't quite get trans people, but they do understand respecting people. They do understand struggling. And they understand that if these are people struggling in a different way from me, but still struggling, I can respect that, and I want to respect them. It was a really good message. We just missed the message. I feel like you can't skirt around that. Obviously, you're not the audience he needs to speak to. You're somebody that's very left-leaning, but his audience isn't that. They're a more conservative audience. And he did a third of the special was about humanizing a trans person that was a very good friend of his, to the point where he did, in my opinion, the most respectful, honorable thing you could ever do for somebody is take care of their children. That's how it ended. It ended with, this trans person meant a lot to me, and they took their life because they defended me, because they understood me, that I was just a jaded person, or I was just like, I didn't fully get it. But they knew I didn't hate trans people. And then that person got bullied to death by an audience that you would generally identify with, Hasan. And it's like, I feel like, I get it. The joke's transphobic. We already talked about that. Like, I don't think that they were hateful, but like, yeah, sure, they were a little bigoted, whatever. And you could focus and complain about that. But like, you're underplaying, you're dialing down and underplaying the profoundly positive. It resonated with me so much. And maybe that's just what it is. After I watched that special, I went out with my fiance. I just didn't talk the rest of the night. Like, it upset me how fucked up that was. And it was such a positive message, and it made me think about all the different interactions in my life and all the different ways that how I value respect. And it hit me really hard. And I feel like, and maybe I'm being too benefit of the doubt, I feel like a lot of people, it hit them really hard too. And they were like, fuck, this is a trans person he was a really good friend with, and he humanized this person, he told a story, and it really fucked me up. I feel like we're underplaying this profoundly positive message. Is it ideal? No. But it's a very positive message. And I just feel like people are downplaying the shit out of it.
You get annoyed when people are constantly like, oh, we got to dictate culture, we got to dictate culture, we got to stop comedians from doing, comedy. It frustrates me. So seeing someone like Dave Chappelle, who I looked up to, like, full disclosure, a good friend of mine is very close with both John Mayer and also Dave Chappelle's manager. I've hung out with them a bunch of times. Like, I can't even have a conversation with Dave Chappelle because I'm fucking terrified. I'm intimidated by him. It's not like that's how much love I have for Dave Chappelle. Like, I've been around him and I can't even fucking talk to him. So seeing someone that I have so much fucking respect for, that I like literally fucking fangirl over like that, do such hacky fucking bits, dude. It sucks. It hurts. Dude, he literally has a joke where he says, I don't hate women, and doesn't need to explain his heart. He's not transphobic and you're living a little too hard. He's not transphobic. He literally said, I'm a trans exclusionary radical feminist, and then and likened trans women to doing blackface. Trans women, in the eyes of Turks, trans exclusionary radical feminists, which are like the least funny people. These are people who are joy kills. These are Turks literally have never laughed, okay? You motherfuckers think leftists are about having no humor? Try Turks. Turks have never laughed in their entire lives, okay? They've never been funny and they've never laughed in their entire lives. Dave Chappelle not only said, I'm a TERF, but also then turned around and said, not only am I a TERF, but like Turks actually see trans women like black people see people doing blackface. That's actually funny if you point out how ridiculous that is. The trans...
See, that's the thing, is I already went over this anecdote, but I'm going to do it again because my fiance, she used to do counseling for older feminists, older LGB people rather, and feminists as well, and just like older women. It was like an older woman support group that were LGBT or LGB, and I say that specifically because a lot of older women that would identify with the female struggle, older feminists, they aren't a big fan of trans people because, and this is something that we have to talk about, because the reality is that trans women don't usually grow up as women, and so they don't have the same experiences. And I think that the majority of the disprivileges that women identify with happen through their developmental phase, where they're turned away from particular jobs or particular, dream jobs, or, when a kid like, oh, I want to be a firefighter. For a young boy, you might be like, yeah, no problem. For a young girl, you might be like, no, you can't do that. You're a girl. Maybe do this. And so they feel like you don't get it. And I think that there's a level of truth to that. And I think that's it's definitely not the most palatable, socially palatable take, but it's something we need to talk about. And I think that ignoring that and just going off on this whole rhetorical rant about how he's a bad person because he's anti-trans, instead of listening to the message, listening to older women who go like, listen, a trans woman will never understand my full struggle. Just like a woman would never, or a cis woman would never understand the full struggle of a trans woman. Right? This gets very complicated in an intersectionality. But I feel like you have to listen to that message because we need to talk about that message and we need to understand that message in order for us to have these honest conversations and figure out solutions and how we can make trans people more affirming or affirm trans people more. But you're not talking about that. I understood the blackface joke. I got it because I understand where they're coming from, where Dave was coming from. Not understanding that issue, because it's a big issue with trans people as well. One of the things that we don't talk about is a lot of trans people, they have trouble with their social interactions because they grew up as their gender assigned at birth, and they transitioned. But a lot of people, and everybody does this, is when you are in a specific situation, you'll recall a past event. In general, that's what you'll do. For a trans woman or a trans man or somebody that's trans, it's hard to do that because if you're a trans woman, you might try to recall. You might be in a situation, intimate situation, and you might try to recall a past situation when you were, still identifying as a male. And it's not really socially acceptable to be the same. It's hard to interact, and that's something that trans people talk about, but nobody gives a fuck about. I don't know why. The difficulty in transitioning, and that's one of the difficulties. This is part of that difficulty, and I feel like either Hasan is ignoring it intentionally or he doesn't understand it. And if you don't understand that, I feel like you're not educated enough on trans issues to talk about this message, because it's a very important thing. I mean, I get it. I get it.
Bathroom bills. That's a funny concept. I've made so many jokes about that. How creepy conservatives are. They want to see what the fuck's going on. What are you gonna do? Check out people's dicks and pussies? Like, that's creepy as fuck. I don't even want to be in a public restroom. And these motherfuckers are out here literally being like, yeah, we need to look into the stalls. And he had a funny joke about that at first when he was talking about the bathroom bills. He said, what, do you want to fucking give a birth certificate to walk into a bathroom? That's crazy. And then immediately switched it up to being like, and then a lady is gonna walk up with a fat cock and pee in the restroom next to me. I don't want that. It's like, and I know these are jokes. I'm not supposed to take them seriously.
Yeah,
and I don't take them seriously, which is why I'm saying, and I am.
Yeah, it was a joke. It was a trans-affirming joke saying that the bathroom bill was a bad thing to an audience that you would call transphobic. And then he made a joke out of it at the end to make it more palatable. I just feel like now we're just dogpiling jokes we don't like. This is one of those things where like he's just a hack to you because you don't like his content. That's it.
I'm very privileged to be able to not take that seriously. And I know people who do take that seriously because when you see a room full of people fucking losing their mind and giving a standing ovation to someone who's literally being like, trans women are just men who are in a dress, lol. That sucks. Like if you're a trans person, you're like, what the fuck, dude? Especially if you're a fan of this person. Imagine you're a fan of mine and I just sit here and do an entire fucking hour just shitting on your existence. That would fucking hurt, man. That would hurt. And that's the reality. And you can do that if you don't care. And that's the problem. A lot of people don't fucking care, especially about trans people. So it's additionally laughable when motherfuckers like trans people are controlling culture. Like we're catering to the needs of trans people in our culture. That's no different than saying gay people are controlling culture in the 90s.
Well, they didn't say that at all. I'm so confused.
And we're catering to their needs.
Oh, he's talking about, I guess, cancel culture, maybe?
It's no different.
I guess. We talked about cancel culture obscurely.
Saying black people are controlling culture in the 60s, and a lot of people said things like that. But you know what? Those motherfuckers weren't funny. They were just racist or homophobic. And
well, he was talking about how the baby got canceled for making homophobic remarks. He even said that he didn't enjoy the homophobic remarks, but they shouldn't have been so harsh on him.
Now, they're transphobic. If you find yourself agreeing or repeating jokes from Steven Crowder's broadcast, if you find yourself being defended by Ben Shapiro's of the world. As
who fucking cares about Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder? This is irrelevant. Dave Chappelle's not those people.
Insightful cultural critic, as comedians are. And that's a lot of responsibility. That's ridiculous. Like, you fucking failed. The show is actually good. You're just a bit too sensitive, to be honest. Smile. Yeah, dude, I'm the most sensitive motherfucker out there, dude. Listen, man, he literally talked about a friend of his who was trans. And that friend of his killed herself. A trans comedian. Talking about her bombing was fucking hilarious. That was actually a good part of the bit. And relentlessly and mercilessly shitting on her trans opener was funny. That was actually funny because it came from a place of empathy and respect for that person as an individual, as a human being. That was a good story. Then turning around and misgendering them while refusing to examine the conditions that led to that person jumping off of a fucking building and killing themselves shows me that it's hard for Dave Chappelle to practice.
What are you talking about? He did examine the reasons. The reason was because of people on Twitter bullied them to killing themselves. People on Twitter, leftists on Twitter, who didn't like that Daphne defended Dave. He did examine it. And you want to know what's so fucked up? I'm getting irritated because I watched the special. He did misgender Daphne once as a joke, and he ended it tearfully, saying, I know she would have loved that joke. This is just the most dishonest representation of Dave Chappelle possible. He did examine it. He talked about how it was fucking people that you would align with bullying Daphne to kill herself because she defended Dave and said that he wasn't transphobic. And even if you disagree with her, does she deserve to be bullied to death? You know, hate comments for disagreements to the point where a trans person, and like, let's talk about it. There are a lot of associations with mental health issues and trans people, a lot of chronic anxiety and depression. And as another trans people, and these are the people that bullied her to killing herself, you should understand the additional mental struggles and shouldn't be so toxic. In general, you shouldn't be doing this, but at the very least, somebody who has like a general association, because that's what there is. Like the societal pressures create these situations where you'll have chronic anxiety and depression just from, you know, just constantly worrying if you're fitting in right or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, dude. I feel like Hasan didn't act. I feel like Hasan watched it ready to just shit on Dave Chappelle instead of giving him a chance, because he knew that that's the only thing he could do, because his audience would have emphatically just rejected him if he didn't do that. This feels like a pandering mark because you're just missing everything in it. Everything.
His empathy towards trans people because he doesn't see them as fucking full human beings. It doesn't matter. That's it. And that's the problem.
Disagree.
I mean, there are super fucking cringe ass trans people. I make fun of them sometimes too. The difference is I'm not making fun of them being trans, or I'm not fucking saying they're cringe because they're trans. I'm making fun of them because they're cringe. I'm not saying that you can't make fun of trans people, that there isn't any humor to be found in the trans existence. We have incredibly binary and very rigid gender norms that we have literally built everything around. It is so important to our identity. And people are so honestly and personally fucking trans that they literally say, fuck all that. This is me. And people fucking murder them for it. I don't know what other proof you need. It's like talking about being openly gay in like the fucking 60s and 70s. Like, and people saying, oh, you're just doing it for attention. It's like, dude, really? You want to suck a cock for attention then? If it's just for attention? Oh, people are being trans for attention because they're getting like so many benefits. Really? The benefits of what, dude? Not being able to get your fucking the hormones? Not being able to pay for that shit? Thinking that every single person around you is a fucking threat? That seems like a fun experience, dude. Who the fuck wants that, dude? That's such a psychotic thing. The privilege of being fired from your job.
I don't think Dave Chappelle ever made a point that that there are trans people who are just doing it for attention. And if he did, it would have been within the context, I guess, of younger transgenders, kids. This is what kids do in general in like high school. They identify with the what's popular. That doesn't invalidate other trans people. But I don't even think he made that point. And again, the most reinforceable point that they've made is that trans people are people going through shit and to respect them. So, I mean, I just feel like you're skirting over. That was the point of the whole 15-minute anecdote.
That you never felt comfortable at because you thought that every single person was already like looking at you like you're some fucking freak. That's the wonderful benefits of being trans, I think. Trans people tell trans jokes to each other all the time. Only keyboard warriors are super PC about it. Okay, but that's different than just being like, lol, you're a dude wearing a dress. You know what I mean? That's like such a fucking bottom of the fucking barrel, dude. It's just like such low-hanging fruit. Ultimately, do I care? Do I think that like Dave Chappelle should be deplatformed? I'm sorry. You might get mad at me. I don't. It's not gonna happen regardless.
Oh, what a hot take for your audience that you just pandered to. No, a hot take. I don't think he should be deplatformed. It's not really a hot take. Like you're just you're taking everything he said out of context intentionally. Like I don't understand.
No matter what you say or think, it's just sad. It is what it is. Even if fucking Netflix pulls the special, like nothing is gonna happen. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's like if Netflix says like, oh, we stand with our trans creators and that's why we're pulling the special. Like, okay, like that's not. You're not. I don't think you're making like a impact in the way that you think you are when that happens. And ultimately, you're not changing Dave Chappelle's attitude on it. It's just.
I like how he didn't even mention so far why Daphne killed herself. Do you like how he didn't talk about the reasoning was because of the toxic trans community online? Did that bullied her for defending Dave? Why didn't you talk about that? Why is that context irrelevant to you? I mean, we're 15 minutes in. You've talked about Daphne twice now and you haven't mentioned it. You might mention it later, but you should have mentioned it both times when they were talking about it. You specifically criticized Dave for not going into the details on why she took her life.
It's just for the optics. Would you say the same thing if it was raised against black people? Well, the difference is if it was like overtly and openly raised against black people, it would not have been published. That doesn't mean that like black people overall are in a better condition than trans people. I'm not engaging in the oppression Olympics narrative here. We have an understanding of what like overt racism is nowadays, making comparisons to other animals and discussing black people, saying the N-word. These are like instances of overt racism that even conservatives don't fucking defend. You know what I mean? But overt transphobia is still by and large accepted. Who cares? Trans people do. I know you don't. Because when you say stuff like who cares, you're saying like I don't care about trans people fucking not just like having a feeling of discomfort because that is permanent. Okay? I don't know from personal experience, but like even defending trans people on the internet as a fucking cishet white dude, you get death threats. Okay? So I can't even imagine how fucking discomforting it must be to constantly have to fucking debate your existence on a regular basis. You know, I'm sure that there are people who care. Is it so bad that he doesn't say the right thing if he still treats them like human beings? Bro, what a take, dude. This is like Jordan Peterson discourse all over again. If anything, it's worse than Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson single-handedly was able to fucking create a controversy around Bill C-16, which was a misrepresentation of a bill, and it fucking sparked so many transphobic fucking...
Who cares about Jordan Peterson? So they asked them... Oh my god, you're just going off on these tangents that are so relevant.
If he still treats them like human beings? Constantly have to fucking debate your existence on a regular basis. You know, I'm sure that there are people who care. Is it so bad that he doesn't say the right thing if he still treats them like human beings? Bro.
Well, he does say the right thing, but like, no, that's a positive step. This is the problem with people who think that like their perspective on the world is the best perspective on the world. We move gradually and slowly. We need to move forward, and trans people need to be more accepted. But you don't have to be the most trans-affirming person to respect trans people. Just use the pronouns they ask for and speak or call them by their name. It's just one of those things where if Dave Chappelle doesn't align with Hasan's ideology, it's never going to be enough, and that's the problem.
Oh, what a take, dude. This is like Jordan Peterson discourse all over again. If anything, it's worse than Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson single-handedly was able to fucking create a controversy around Bill C-16, which was a misrepresentation of a bill, and it fucking sparked so many transphobic fucking discourse. Dave Chappelle is infinitely fucking more popular than dumbass Jordan Peterson. The overreaction to the special is insane. This is why real issues have trouble catching on. That's literally not fucking true. There is no overreaction to it either. First of all, I think transphobia is a real issue. That's, you know, a ridiculous thing to just brush aside. If you're in here and you hear me literally say like, you're not gonna be able to cancel Dave Chappelle, I think comedy policing sucks. I'm not trying to fucking cancel Dave Chappelle. It just sucks to see someone make such fucking hacky attempts. You know, you hear on the bar stool of every fucking bar in like a reactionary town, you know what I mean? My criticism is like, fucking Dave Chappelle is doing like hacky ass bits, he's a fucking boomer, and you're like, blah, 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 the overreaction. It's like, dude, come on, dude, he's literally doing, yeah, oh my god, yeah, Bill Maher style humor. Man, it's fucking other people can't take jokes anymore. What? Dude, you guys are fucking pathetic, dude. You are literally pathetic. So insanely pathetic. If you can't even fucking, if you have to come in here and defend Dave Chappelle when I'm fucking like lightly and gently criticizing him, even then you're like, I can't take it. I can't.
You're not really lightly and I mean, I guess so, but you're still being a dick. You're just not. You're misrepresenting Dave Chappelle. I mean, I don't know if it's intentional or not.
Fucking take it, dude. Fuck you. I'm not the one who's overreacting, motherfucker. You're overreacting. Look, man, Dave's getting the bag. That's precisely what he's doing. He's getting the bag. He doesn't give a shit, and he's doing it in the most like fucking bottom feeding way you can. Okay, I like to hold people that I consider comedy fucking legends to a higher standard. That's the reality. The absolute worst part about
I find that ironic that you hold comedy standards, people like, you know, comedians to a high standard, but you don't really hold yourself to a high standard. And I know like this is a redundant argument, but like I'm frustrated. I watched that Leftover episode 3, and I watched him talk about shit, and it was like really shitty. It was just so bizarre to listen to him justify why he makes so much money and doesn't pay people more. He's like, well, I'm a worker there too, and it's like, well, this gets into a whole new argument because most owners of businesses work for the business as well. So. And they do bigger jobs. Now, of course, CEOs aren't the same, but I find it incredible. I really do. And it's like the most incredible gaslight that you have an individual who's very financially successful, who speaks very heavily out against Amazon. I don't care if you're bored of this take. You need to listen to it because the fact that you're just like allowing him to reprogram you is kind of sad. He criticizes Amazon for being the most oppressive and worst business in the entire world. And then he takes an exclusivity deal with them instead of trying to hurt them, get them where it hurts, right? And the way you do that is you would continue to stream on Twitch and another platform that's less oppressive. Could be YouTube. I don't really know. Could be any platform. What's the negative side? Oh, he can't get Twitch Prime subs or any subs. which hurts Twitch, makes them get less money. And it pulls people to a different audience so they can donate to you there, and you can still get your Streamlab stuff. But of course, like, you understand that it's incredible how there's such a high standard for a comedy legend, but for you, there doesn't seem to be any real standards. I mean, you made this point where, like, oh, I don't even read what people say, like, when they donate money or anything, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, I feel like that's because you just don't like people so much. It's so interesting that you're just going out of your way to misinterpret Dave Chappelle so much and to go on this whole entire tirade, but you criticize people for doing the same thing to you. And I find it interesting you feel he should be held to a higher standard. Like, what about yourself? Why don't you hold yourself to a higher standard?
Cancel culture is just that, like, it has made every fucking comedian exclusively talk about how bad cancel culture is. Like, all these fucking legends, dude. It's like, come on, man. Get new material, please.
Well, maybe cancel culture is a problem. Like, I don't know. Maybe there is a problem with cancel culture. Maybe that's why people talk about it. Maybe they're frustrated by it.
Trans women are not women. Is it the same as they're not human? What? Dude, every fucking counter whenever I make this argument is literally, no, you don't understand. I'm transphobic, so, like, it's different. It's like a racist person coming in here and being like...
I mean, he called Daphne a girl multiple times. Said she constantly, except for the one time he made a joke.
Dude, discussing how violent black people are inherently, that's normal. That's a normal conversation to have. It's like, no, you're just reporting that you yourself are fucking literally just a racist. Or in this situation, you yourself are reporting that you're just transphobic, so you don't comprehend it. And I'm simply asking you to just fucking literally just take a step back and try to comprehend it instead of immediately lashing back. Because look, we haven't had this conversation in a while. We haven't had this conversation in a long time. So it bears repeating. So trans people, there's going to be a little bit of fucking excusing of transphobia in here. If that's too much for you to handle, I'm letting you know it's about to come out of my mouth. I've talked about how I used to have transphobic opinions. I talked about how numerous times over that I understand why someone's like point of origin is transphobic. Now, why do I understand that? Because fucking trans people have internalized transphobia when they're fucking growing up. Why? Because every part of our societal development in the Western world is just built around the rigid binary concept of having two genders. That's it. That's just the reality. So I get why I understand that. How numerous times over that I understand why someone's like point of origin is transphobic. Now, why do I understand that? Because fucking trans people have internalized transphobia when they're fucking growing up. Why? Because every part of our societal development in the Western world is just built around the rigid binary concept of having two genders. That's it.
I've found that to be such a weird point of, like, our rigid binary world. Like, it's the Western world's fault that we have this rigid binary perspective. And, like, of course, it's part of our Western culture. But the most affirming cultures of trans people are Western cultures. So I find it to be such, like, a weird time to knock Western civilization. Like, when I watched that Leftovers episode 3, he was jerking off China, how great they were, how they brought workers out of poverty, even though that their standard of living is substantially worse than ours. You know, and then until Ethan was like, yeah, but China's pretty fucked. It took Ethan saying that for Hasan to be like, yeah, well, I know that they're really terrible and that they're, like, literally genociding Muslims, but they're still pretty good when it comes to, and it's like, he just hates the Western world. It's a weird thing to point out. Like, I get it. There's flaws. Capitalism has flaws. I totally get it. That's why I'm for, like, more robust welfare systems, whatever. But he just is like, yeah, Western people are so bad when it comes to the binary. Go to any other country that's not a West country, and it's worse for trans people for the most part. I don't know.
That's it. That's just the reality. So I get why people's starting points is like, oh, this shit, dude, fucking, yeah, what? That's not normal. I don't know what's going on there. It's like, that's what you grow into. Okay, that's what you learn. Obviously, that's not the case in different cultures, and that gender is a social construct. Even the sex that we talk about between male and female is not the rigid binary, and that is the current scientific thought on the matter. For the record, that even sex, or what transphobic people oftentimes consider biological gender, even that's not a fucking binary in the way that we thought we understood it. There's
sure, like bimodal, whatever. I get it.
A fuckload of intersex people, for example. Gender is just the skin you wear on top of that. So it is difficult to shake that when every part of your existence is built around this. Every part of your existence is built around the concept that you're a man. I'm a male. I have masculine traits. I gotta be a man. I gotta be male. But when someone comes around and, like, kind of breaks that, you're like, my whole world view is broken. Fuck that shit. No. So your immediate reaction is to close off and be closed-minded. That's the reason.
Yeah, at least he didn't push back on that episode. Yeah, he did push him back. He didn't really push him enough, but I understand why, because he's not super, like, educated on politics, and I'm not either. But I remember there was a point where Hasan was talking about in that Leftovers podcast how we have banks that, well, I think they're called IMF loans, that will go to other countries that are not doing well and will give them loans on the condition that they stop particular behaviors. And Hasan was talking about how that's like horrible imperialism. And I'm sure that it is, I would guess you'd consider that imperialism. But the conditions were the conditions that that country would go through that was making them fail, right? So you'd have to have, basically they would make sure you didn't utilize the conditions that were making you fail, so you'd be successful so they can get a return on it, right? It was like this weird thing. So it is kind of mutually beneficial for the bank to like give you money, these other countries money, on the conditions that they would go towards a plan of success. And then he was like, oh, this is terrible. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe there's downsides and there's upsides as well, you know.
why I especially get mad at cultural critics who are actually insightful and pretty fucking brilliant, like Dave Chappelle, who participate in the closing off and say, no, you're fine to fucking feel this way about trans people. They're fucking.
I find that so interesting. I don't like that criticism. There's this criticism that people will make that's like, you're usually a really smart guy. And people say this to me too, but you're just really dumb on this take. And it's like, stop for a second. And it's quite possible that I'm wrong and Dave Chappelle's wrong. But don't you think that if you have respect the person and you agree with everything else that they're saying, but one thing, don't you think maybe it's worth listening to, like, for real? You know?
Fucking weird, dude. It's crazy. They're just like crazy. Because that's all he's doing in that special. He's saying trans people are weird, they're crazy, they're different, they're bad, they're wrong. And also they're like
That's not what he's saying at all. He's saying that you should respect them and they're people and you don't need to understand their struggle. I feel like you're really glossing over that fact.
cry-bullying all the time, and they're punching down at everybody else because we won't participate in the crazy.
He made a joke about punching down on him because they they contributed to his friend killing herself. I feel like that's up. Yeah. And he didn't even get into this. He didn't even go on a tangent. He didn't even go on a tangent about it and like drag LGBTQ people online, like fucking performative activists online, which are probably mostly non-trans people that are just trying to be hateful. He mentioned it and he moved on and he focused on Daphne and like how horrible it was.
The thing I hate about this, by the way, is that like I like to build class consciousness, and I want there to be class solidarity amongst the working class, which currently does not exist. And I also believe in intersectionality. It literally destroys intersectionality when you're pitting one marginalized community's plight against another, and that's why, oh god, just like the fucking capital owning class.
But that's what happened to him, no? He's like, you're punching down, Dave. You as a black man are punching down trans people. So he got frustrated. He said, how am I punching down? Like, we still don't have, like, we've been fighting longer and still don't have the same rights. Like, it's a huge issue. There's more. I would say that there's more systemic oppression associated with black people than trans people and gay people, which there still is. But, you know, being a white gay person is much easier than being a black cis person or straight person. So I think that's the point he was making, which I think, and we don't have to play oppression Olympics here. We don't need to, but we can understand a general point of frustration that Dave Chappelle's a 48-year-old man, I believe, that has been going through his shit. And he's pissed off a little bit that people in a community that have been going faster socially, getting social recognition faster and social acceptance faster than his community, are shitting on him and saying that he's punching down. That's what he's frustrated. Dave Chappelle would have never brought up this point except for that they keep telling him that he's punching down. He's punching down. He's punching down. That's it. That's his whole point of criticism is I'm not punching down. I'm making a fucking joke. And this punching up, punching down narrative is just so dumb. It's just ridiculous. You can have a particular commentary on things. It doesn't have to be punching down. Like, it does not everything needs to, because he even affirmed the punching up, punching. He's like, oh, all jokes are punching up, down. You're engaging in the oppression Olympics when you talk about punching up versus punching down. Like, when you bring that point up, you are playing identity politics because you can't punch up or down unless you bring some kind of an identity into it. That's the thing. And so, like, that's why Dave Chappelle was talking about it, because his critics were bringing we're bringing it into it.
Absolutely loves when a worker tells another worker to fuck off because his job is not as backbreaking as his. These fucking racist pieces of shit love when a guy like Dave Chappelle is just being like, I'm pitting black existence against trans existence, and I'm saying enough is enough. This is fat material for Ben Shapiro, okay? Oh, so good. Oh, incredible. 10 out of 10. So why the fuck would you make yourself literally a puppet for reactionary psychos?
So Dave Chappelle has a brand new special on Netflix, and he
Is he gonna watch the
sort of alternates his specials. He does ones that are kind of woke and then highly praised because they're not as funny, but they're
Do I really give a fuck about the Dave Chappelle one? I mean, about the Ben Shapiro one?
woke by the Rotten Tomatoes crowd. And then he does ones that are actually funny, but politically incorrect. So he makes some comments in his new Netflix special.
Oh yeah. Dave Chappelle is catering to the woke crowd with some of his specials, the ones that I don't like, and then he's actually funny on the specials where he's just like repeating shit that I would probably say on my broadcast. Got it. Okay.
I mean, like, honestly, I don't even know if I give a fuck about watching Ben Shapiro's take on this, because this is what's happening. This is what Hasan's gonna do. Hasan is criticized Dave Chappelle out of context completely, like intentionally. I would assume intentionally, or maybe he just didn't get it, which is fine. I mean, I don't doubt it. Hasan, that's fine. And now he's been likening Dave Chappelle to Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. So now he's going to show Ben Shapiro. So now he can say, like, look, somebody I disagree with agrees with Dave Chappelle, so I must be right to my audience because my audience doesn't like Dave Chappelle. And it's a very disingenuous thing to do. I guess let's...
Trans exclusionary radical feminists, as they're called by the trans community, meaning women who say that biological women exist. Here is Dave Chappelle defending J.K. Rowling.
I'm Team Turks. I agree, man. Gender is a fact. You have to look at it from a woman's perspective. Look at it like this. Caitlyn Jenner, whom I've met, wonderful person.
That's it. Cancel. Okay, I take it back. Cancel this man. Who the fuck says Caitlyn Jenner is a wonderful person, dude? That's probably the worst thing that he said. How are you gonna say gender is a fact and then follow that up with an even worse take? Seriously, dude. My man said, I'm a TERF, gender is a fact, and the worst thing he said on that fucking sequence of sentences was, Caitlyn Jenner, whom I've met, is a wonderful person. How, dude? This is not okay. Okay, let's keep going.
Caitlyn Jenner was voted Woman of the Year.
Okay, by the way, the whole like pandering to Caitlyn Jenner and all that shit, like that is something you can make fun of. Like brands picking like brands wanting to be sensitive and being like, oh yeah, there it is, Caitlyn Jenner, Woman of the Year. Like that was actually not that bad.
Her first year as a woman. Ain't that something?
That was actually not that bad. I forgot that there was a good joke there because of how taken aback I was from him saying Caitlyn Jenner, wonderful person. Like I actually forgot.
Okay, for this sort of stuff.
Oh my God, hold on. What was that a bench beer laughs moment? Oh God, he should never laugh, dude. We're talking about Dave Chappelle. I'm gonna close it off on this subject by showing you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty interesting conversation about, like, that's why some women are upset, because like somebody became a trans woman, boom, trans woman, and then they took over the Woman of the Year thing. And so for some women that was frustrating. Now, I know that it was really just like a social pander. I understand that. And it was supposed to be like a activism moment for that magazine, which is fine. But I can understand why people would be upset, because now you have a trans woman that erases the issues of a cis woman. Because Caitlyn Jenner definitely went through her own struggle as a trans person, but she didn't grow up as a woman. So she doesn't understand the struggle of what it's like to grow up as a woman through your developmental period, which is a massive part of your life. And as a trans person, if you don't grow up as a trans woman, if you're not growing up as a woman, it does have a bit of a disconnect from cisgender women's issues, which is mostly what feminism is about, right? And this is just a conversation that nobody's having, because if you mention that, it turns into like, oh, you're invalidating trans people. Like, I'm not. I'm talking about the distinctly different struggles, and we need to understand them. And that came from like a real place, you know?
Is my tweet from last night, where I said comedy policing is the dumbest thing. It's not activism, but man, Dave Chappelle is just a boomer now. It's very sad to see. And boy, did the fucking people who love edgy humor lose their fucking shit at literally just like the slightest hint of criticism. Don't tell Hasan Piker that he's 30. I think you should actually have any comedic talent whatsoever to speak of the quality of comedy. Man makes a living off other people's content, trying to cancel other people's content. In other words, like, I didn't even say that. Literally did not even say that. Didn't say Dave Chappelle deserves to be canceled or anything like that. I even said that comedy policing and shit like that is just, it's not activism. See, Hasan's such
Well, you just did comedy policing though, no?
pussy, Lamau. Bro, you're such a fucking pussy, dude. You don't like Dave Chappelle. How dare you? You fucking pussy. I'll fucking lose my mind, dude. Why are you so angry? Laugh at the things I laugh. I'm sure Dave Chappelle will be bummed to know he's disappointed the hipster socialist Fortnite player. Everything you speak, it makes me more Turkophobic. Comedy policing is dumb. Police is a comedian. If you're using the word hipster on the internet in 2021, the year of our holy Lord, I'm gonna be honest with you, you're probably a fucking 40-year-old divorced dad on 4chan, okay? It's really sad. Your life is pathetic, but hey, if it stops you from fucking...
Yeah, those two things can be different but valid, 100%.
Ending it, then all right, keep posting, brother. Keep green texting, okay? You'll get through this, okay? Green text through the fucking suicidal ideation. You fucking 45-year-old pathetic loser hanging out with like literal fucking children on the internet. You're such a pussy and it shows. Shut the fuck up, you rich grifter asshole. I didn't say Dave Chappelle deserves to be canceled. I didn't say anything.
That part's true. He is a rich grifting asshole. I hate the word grifting too. It's so unintelligent, but I don't know. Based on the way that he aligns, well, he doesn't align with the ideology he pushes. Like, yeah, I think that he might be a grifter. He might not know it though. I think that he just doesn't understand what he thinks and feels because he's never worked. He's not really a person with like, I don't know, bro. He's a sheltered person. That's what I'm gonna say. I don't care if you disagree with that. You know.
Of the sort. Thank you, avowed socialist who is rich and has the same opinion as corporations. You know, because Dave Chappelle released his 6-episode special on I don't know, the artisanal, independently owned, non-corporate entity that is Netflix, or a $7 gazillion fucking contract. Until Superman's a disabled trans man, spare me your pinkwashing DC Comics. I hate that these motherfuckers know what pinkwashing is, okay? It's like, don't learn about these concepts.
What is this?
Until Superman's a
What does that mean? I don't even know what
disabled
that
trans man, spare me your pinkwashing DC Comics. I hate that these motherfuckers know what pinkwashing is, okay? It's like, don't learn about these concepts, Ben. I don't like that. Pinkwashing is what the IDF does, and is what, like, is when corporations are like, we're super LGBT friendly, and they just, like, use LGBT characters. I mean, it's kind of what DC is doing, you know what I mean? Or Netflix. Oh, pinkwashing. Here, great example, dude. Here, this is pinkwashing. Are you ready? Netflix being like, black trans women in loving memory of the black trans women and femmes killed in the US. Since 2019. Hashtag never knew love. Here are 5 translator organizations doing the work on the ground for trans people of color. Netflix has suspended a trans employee who tweeted about Dave Chappelle's comedy special. That's right. That's fucking pinkwashing, okay?
Okay. Yeah, man, I don't know. At the end of the day, I think Hasan, whether it was, maybe I'm just being too rude and saying he intentionally missed it, but he definitely missed the understanding. And this is something that people do need to understand. This is what I want to end this with because I think it's a very important thing. Not everybody thinks the same. I think it's wrong to be transphobic, but transphobia exists. And so the goal is to make it not exist. And how you make things change is usually slowly. People aren't going to change like that, especially older people. Dave Chappelle's perspective on trans people is that he doesn't get them, and he may not even think that trans women are women, but he still refers to them as such because he understands, and this was a big part of his special. It was like 1/3 of the special was the Daphne content. He understands that trans people are just people going through shit, and you don't have to understand that they're shit. You just need to understand that they're going through shit. Everybody's going through shit. We should all be able to universally understand and identify with just going through a struggle, even if it's not the same struggle. And that's what it is. It's about empathy. And for a lot of people who are transphobic, that's a really positive thing, because that's the difference between them saying, I'm never going to call you a woman to a trans woman, and saying, okay, sorry, ma'am. Seriously, that's a huge step. That's a huge thing. That's a big deal, because we don't live on the internet for the most part. For the most part, we live in the real world. So when you have somebody that's in the real world, the most that they're going to interact with a trans person is if they see a trans person. And so this is the difference between them calling a trans woman she or he. And that could have a profoundly positive or negative impact on a trans person's mentality. That could be the last thing. That could be the last straw. That could be what pushes them to take their own life, just like Twitter activists did to Daphne. And that's what we need to talk about. That's a big deal. That's like a huge deal. I feel like we're not getting that message. And I understand you can criticize Dave Chappelle. I don't care about the criticism. I don't like that it's intentionally out of context. It feels disingenuous. I could just be, maybe Hasan just really didn't go through it. Or maybe I'm just somebody that grew up in the real world and I understand that like ideals are just that. They're ideals. Practicality is what we need to focus on. Right? We need to get people to be less transphobic. That starts with just properly gendering them. Whether you believe they're valid or not, it doesn't matter. Right? I mean, it doesn't. I know that you want to be all fucking, people want to be butthurt about it, but it doesn't matter if you actually think trans people are valid. What matters is how you interact with those people. If your interaction is you're not valid, that's shitty. If your interaction is, okay, you're valid, I'll call you by your pronouns, that's enough to not get a trans person to kill themselves. That's a big deal. So I'm telling trans people to bear with it. I'm saying that, like, in an ideal world, we would all be affirming of trans people. We don't live in an ideal world. Like, it would be really cool if we did. But, like, we live in the real world, man, and it's just not going to happen. You're, like, do you think you can convince your grandfather to change anything about him? Probably not. It's very difficult. But if there might be a little thing you can do, right? We need to focus on the small steps. The next step is to get people to stop expressing their transphobia. I know that this was a comedy special and Dave has a platform and he was expressing transphobia, but the fundamental message was one, telling people to not express transphobia. And that's what I'm trying to focus on. Marginal progress. I hope I use that word right or I'll look stupid.